Record reflect that all that yours asked before me, anything the record say?
Nothing for the state, Your Honor.
Anything the record,
No, sir.
what's the recess to, or?
Everyone stand. Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Grant County Superior Court be recessed until 2:30 p.m. Like I say, the state hospital, you may leave. Nothing on behalf of the state, Your Honor.
Anything the record on behalf of the, made like you. For the absent state,
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Joshua Martin.
Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your eyes. Do you solemnly swear that evidence you speak according to your wish to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Can you state your name for the record?
It is Joshua James Martin.
And how are you employed and for whom are you employed?
I am a chief deputy with the Greenbrier County Sheriff's Office in West Virginia.
And were you so employed on January 1st of 2015?
I was employed as sergeant back then. So
And what are your duties as a sergeant with the Greenbrier County Sheriff's Office?
I was sergeant on road patrol, conduct criminal investigations, traffic stops, basic law enforcement.
Were you scheduled to work that day?
That's correct, I was.
And what time were you scheduled to go in?
I believe on that day I was scheduled at 8 o'clock p.m., I believe. It may have been 4 or 8 o'clock.
Or were you called out early for any reason?
I was called out for this incident.
All right, you say this incident, what exactly were you called out for?
I was called out for, I was informed that 2 Lewisburg Police Department officers had been shot.
Do you recall exactly what time you received this call?
It was in the evening, probably 2:30, 3:30, somewhere in there. I remember it was after lunch.
Was it still daylight?
It was daylight, yes, sir.
And where were you when you got this call?
I was just out, actually in my driveway. I was going to head to the gym before work, so I'd come out a little early to go to the gym.
How long did it take you to get to the scene?
15.
Uniform or anything?
I remember I was in my gym shorts, but I remember it was cold. It started getting cold, so at some point I put clothes on. I don't know when.
So after you responded to the scene, what happened next?
I responded to where the officers actually were shot. While we were there, we had gotten information that the driver of the red truck, or actually the red truck, was that had left the scene, was found somewhere west of our position.
About how far?
We located the vehicle. It was probably a mile, mile and a half, maybe 2 miles at the most from where the officers were shot.
And was it visible from the road, or can you describe a little bit, I guess, about where the vehicle was located, if you know?
Yes. What I originally saw was tire tracks in the high grass on the left-hand side of the interstate. And you can see tire tracks going over a steep embankment. Very, very high-pitched embankment. It's full of rocks, trees, brush, things of that nature. The vehicle, you couldn't see it from the interstate. You had to get out of your vehicle and look over the hill, and you could see the truck down over the hill.
Was this on the left-hand side or the right-hand side of the interstate?
It was on the left-hand side.
And is it in the area that has been referred to as the divide?
That's what we call it, yes.
What happened next, Chief Deputy?
What I done is, I think it was Officer Vance was right behind me, and he actually stopped where the vehicle was, so I drove on, I don't know, a few hundred yards and started to set up a perimeter. Once I seen the truck was over the hill, we started setting up, informing guys to, hey, spread yourself out, stay in sight with each other, and be looking in the woods. We found the truck here, so we was giving that information, just set up a perimeter.
Did Officer Vance have a radio?
I don't recall.
Did you have a radio?
Yes.
And so did you communicate to other officers through the radio?
Yes, sir.
Did you organize or otherwise, I guess, start officers spreading out on this area?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
And then what we done was, like I said, we set up, usually within eyesight of each other. I don't know how many's been to West Virginia, but you got some curves in West Virginia. So each person was usually set up within a few hundred yards of each other. And we just kept eye-to-eye contact with everything, and also was looking in the woods. We didn't know where anyone was at that time, so we just set up a few hundred yards apart where we could see each other and look for anyone.
How many officers were involved in this perimeter?
A bunch. I mean, more. In West Virginia, we don't have a lot of officers on duty at a certain given time. It's a rural area, very rural. So anytime something big comes, I mean, people come from all over the place, other counties. I couldn't tell you how many was there, sir. I don't know.
Was it still light when this effort was going on?
I'm sorry?
Was it still light?
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you describe the terrain for the jury?
The terrain was a wooded area. The divide itself is 300-400 yards in width. Woods, briars, rocks, boulders. That's about the best I can describe it.
All right. Can you describe the position that you took up on the in this perimeter?
Yes, what I took a position on was what we call high wall. What that is basically is where they cut a road through the hill or a mountain, whatever you want to call it. But it's rock walls that's built through the interstate, and I took position on one of those, probably about 20 or 30 feet up in the air.
And why did you take position up in the air like that?
The elevation, for me to see into the divide, the wooded area, I had to get up that high just to see into the woods. So that's why I got up there.
Now, were you on the same side of the interstate as the divide, or were you on the opposite side?
I was on the same side as the divide. I was on the left.
How long were you up there?
until the state police come through and they end up searching the woods after we arrested the defendant. I'd say 11 o'clock roughly at night.
Okay. You said that they arrested the defendant.
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you tell us about how he was apprehended?
I observed the defendant come out of the wood line. The next person I believe down below me was Jason Burdett, and I seen the defendant coming out of the woods about halfway between me and Jason
You
Burdett.
said the defendant. Can you describe who you saw?
I'll be honest with you, sir. I couldn't tell you. There so far. It was so far from where he come out of the woods. I mean, it's 150, 200 yards probably. Whenever I observed him, I could just tell you it was a male subject.
Okay. Did you notice anything about him?
No, sir. He was walking towards me. As he was walking towards me, I let him get as close as I could. You know, mind you, I'm up here. He's walking this way, kind of. And once he got directly out in front of me, I informed him to show me his hands, gave verbal commands.
Now, how long between the time that you saw him and you gave him these verbal commands and when you first set up this perimeter? If you know.
I mean, it wasn't immediately, and it wasn't 2 hours. I wouldn't imagine. It was, I don't know. It was within an hour, best of my recollection.
Was it still light?
It was dusk. It was getting right there at it's kind of wasn't light and it wasn't dark. It was right there before.
Anything else that you kind of noticed about the area as he was walking out? Or?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Did he comply to your verbal commands?
No. I just informed him to show me his hands, and he just kept walking. That's about it.
What happened next?
He was taken into custody by Deputy Sawyers, who's a sergeant on our department.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I believe there was a couple other guys. I think. I don't know who.
Okay. Just tell us about it.
What happened was, as he was coming by and he was right in front of me, I said, "Show me your hands. Show me your hands. Show me your hands." All rapid, repetitive, rapid fire, and he just walked, just kept walking, and within, I mean, it wasn't even a second. Kevin Sawyers tackled the defendant.
Okay. And at that point, did he remain in custody?
Yes. As far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, because once he was taken into custody, I focused back on the divide. We didn't know if we had somebody else in the woods or not. I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Now, did you see him come out of this area called the divide?
I did, yes.
All right. Did you see any kind of movement or anything first?
I heard movement in the divide. I heard movement, and then, but as far as seeing anybody in the divide, I didn't see him until he exited the divide out of the wood line.
Okay, but that's where he was.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how far again did you say he was from your position when you saw him exit the divide?
150, 200 yards, I would guess, somewhere in there.
And do you have, did you have an estimation about how far he was from that truck?
I'd say probably 400, 500, 600 yards, somewhere in that range.
Okay. So were you in between the truck and where he had walked out of the divide?
I was, yes.
After he was taken into custody, what did you do, Chief Deputy Martin?
Once he was taken into custody, I refocused my attention back into the woods. We wasn't for sure if anyone else was in the vehicle. We didn't know, so I just focused my attention back into the woods. I stayed in that position until the state police came by with their SWAT team and cleared the woods.
Your Honor, we don't have any further questions at this time.
Witness Griffith,
Thank you, Your Honor.
Deputy Martin, let me get just a couple things clarified. I'm not sure, I may have misunderstood your testimony. Did you respond to the scene originally where the shooting occurred and then go up to look after you heard about the red truck?
Yes, I originally went to where where Officer Dove and Sams was shot first.
And did you go to the red truck or did you go up west of there?
I slowed down and stopped, got out and looked over the hill and seen the red truck, and then I drove on westbound and set up a perimeter.
Now, when you said that it had not been 2 hours but not short time, is that what you're talking about, the time from when you saw the red truck until you saw Mr. Campbell?
Yes, it wasn't too long.
But there was a period of time between when you spotted the truck and when you later saw Mr. Campbell, is that right?
Yes.
Now, were there a number of officers out there that day?
Yes, there were multiple officers.
And could you hear other officers talking and walking around and doing things?
I couldn't hear any other officers walking. I could hear officers when they would yell. Sometimes some guys didn't have a radio. Also, when you have other guys from other counties that come in, you don't have the same radio channels, same frequencies. So sometimes guys was yelling to each other to relay information.
Were you the person who yelled that you heard movement, or did someone else yell that to you?
I heard movement, yes, sir.
And I think you said that the movement was about 150 yards away from you?
Yes, sir, probably within 100 yards or so, I'd say.
Now, this divide, is it wooded, and I think that there are parts where it slopes downhill, is that right?
Yes, sir. There's the terrain in West Virginia. 1 minute you may be up here, the next minute you're 20 feet down, the next minute you're 40 feet up.
So to get back out to 64, and that is where you first saw Eric Campbell, is that right?
Yes, sir, when he exited the wood line and entered right there in the grass off that berm.
So to exit the wood line, he had to climb up to where I-64 is that right?
To exit? No, maybe. He may have. I don't know. I
He had
couldn't
to
tell.
walk out the woods.
Yeah, he had to walk out of the woods, yes, sir.
Into the open.
Yes, yeah,
And he was just walking,
yes.
is that right?
Yes.
And he didn't say a word, did he?
No, he didn't.
He just looked straight at you.
I couldn't tell you. I was focused on his hands.
Well, he started out 150 yards from you, but he kept walking towards you and got within 15 or 20 yards of you. Is that right?
20, 30, I would say, somewhere in that range. As I was elevated, so.
So, but you were yelling commands from the elevated position, is that right?
That's correct.
And so during that time, Mr. Campbell walked a football field or more towards you.
Yes, sir.
And at no time did he do anything other than walk, is that right?
That's correct.
And stare straight forward.
As far as I know, yes, sir.
Didn't say anything,
No, sir.
just walk.
Yes.
And at some point, at least one, if not two officers tackled, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And he just went down when they tackled.
Yes, sir.
He didn't fight or scuffle or anything.
Not that I'm aware of.
He just went straight down.
Yes, sir. He was tackled.
He was tackled and then turned over and they cut his jacket off, isn't that right?
I'm not sure. Once he was tackled and they grabbed his arms, that's when I refocused back into the wood line.
Good record.
No, you're not.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We asked that, Chief Deputy want to be excused.
Any objection?
No, sir.
No problem. Brother, stay.
Yes, sir, Your Honor, the state would call Sergeant Jeff Vance. Here, place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you should give before the jury should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Will you please state your name for the court?
Jeffrey Vance.
And how are you employed, sir?
I'm Sergeant with the Lewisburg Police Department in West Virginia.
How long have you been employed with the Lewisburg Police Department?
A little over 11 years.
How long have you been in law enforcement?
Approximately 17 years.
Where did you spend the other years of your law enforcement career?
The city of North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
As you're employed with the Lewisburg Police Department, I know that you hold the rank of sergeant, but what, is that a patrol, are you a detective? What do you do with the Lewisburg Police Department?
I am a sergeant. I kind of pull dual roles. I work uniform some, and I also do secondary investigations, which are like plainclothes type detective work.
Did you hold this position with the Lewisburg Police Department on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes.
And were you working that day?
No.
Sergeant Vance?
No, I was not.
Were you supposed to work that day?
Yes, I was.
What happened?
I was, myself and one of the other sergeants were the primary training officers, if you will, for Patrolman Sams. I had taken some vacation leave to spend a couple of days with both my children. My daughter was in from college.
And so you had taken off that particular day?
Yes.
And so was Patrolman Sams supposed to be with you on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes.
So were you called to respond to where two officers had been shot on I-64 westbound on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes.
And where were you when you received that call?
I was at home.
About what time, if you remember?
I don't recall, but exactly. I think it was close to 5, 4:30 to 5.
If you were at your house, how long did it take you to get to the scene once you received the call?
10 minutes, maybe.
Were you in a uniform?
No.
Were you driving your patrol car?
Yes, I was.
When you arrived on scene, what happened?
I immediately met actually Lieutenant Dove is my next supervisor above me, so I immediately went to the assistant chief that was on scene and asked for his orders, what he needed me to do.
I'm sorry, I did not hear what you said.
I immediately went to the chief deputy or deputy chief. The Lieutenant Dove was my actual supervisor, so I went to the next one in command and just asked for directions, what he wanted done.
And what did you do?
The first thing they had me do was to stop the video from recording that was in Lieutenant Dove's patrol car so that it could be reviewed on scene by the sheriff of the time and the other supervisory officers that had arrived from other agencies.
And while they were reviewing the video footage, did you also review it?
I didn't review the entire video. I reviewed from the beginning of the traffic stop to the point that Eric Campbell fled in the red truck, so that I would have myself at least a little bit of information, because there were several other people that needed to view the video.
Describe the in-car camera system that the Lewisburg Police Department uses.
At that time, we were using the Martel. I don't know the model number. It's a Martel camera system. It's a digital camera system. Has about a 4-inch display screen in the car that you can observe as the officer or be able to review a video that was recently recorded. It basically operates, it has a power switch so you can turn it completely off where it's not, doesn't come on at all. And then it also, when they're on, they can be triggered in, I think, 3 different ways. You can manually push record. The wireless microphone that we wear on our belts has a trigger to turn the camera on. And anytime you activate the blue lights, it would automatically begin a recording as well.
But this system, to begin working, does the operator of the vehicle have to physically turn on the in-car camera system?
It has to be turned on, like say at the beginning of the shift, and then it can be left on throughout the shift. It would come on and off automatically. Just like with me being, when you're on vacation, it was common practice for us to turn those off because they drain the batteries, and we would have to jump start our vehicles quite often.
So did you have an in-car camera system in your patrol car on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes, I did.
And when you responded to this scene, did you activate your in-car camera system?
No, I did not. The way I was notified of this incident, I didn't think to turn anything on. My flashlights, nothing were in the chargers. Everything had been, because I was off for a period of 5 days, I had taken everything out that may drain the batteries.
And when you say because of the way you received the call, explain what you mean by that.
I was at home, like I said, with my children, and another officer, young officer from Lewisburg Police Department called, and his exact words were, "What do you want me to do?" And I didn't know what he was talking about at that point. He said we had 2 officers shot, and that was all he knew. So I hung up with him and called the 911 center, and the dispatcher confirmed. I think exactly what she told me was there was 2 officers had been shot in the head, and they didn't know anything further than that, the status of anybody involved.
So from there, you just got in your car and you did not activate your in-car camera system? Is
No,
that
I
correct?
just got in my car and I called the assistant chief while I was en route, and he just asked him where he wanted me to go. So I went straight to the scene of the shooting.
So after you reviewed the video there on scene, what happened next?
We were standing around. I didn't have a radio with me, and because I do work in a plainclothes capacity, sometimes I carry an additional duty belt in the trunk of my car. So while they were reviewing the video, I got it out, I put it on, and was just really waiting for orders from my supervisor when I heard some other radio traffic. The 911 center giving out information about seeing somebody had saw a red truck drive off the interstate, and I don't know exactly what they said, but over a hill or into the woods or something along that lines.
And after you heard that, what did you do?
I checked with my supervisor, and he said, "Go help, look," and so I started westbound in my cruiser.
And when you say you started westbound, describe this area, if you will.
Okay. What we refer to as the divides, the I-64, in West Virginia, these mountainous areas, sometimes they actually separate the east and westbound lanes quite a bit to be able to cut through the mountains. So the shooting actually took place right where what we refer to as the divides. It was right at the start of those. So from there, when you go westbound, the further you go for about 2 miles, the interstate gradually gets further apart with this. There's just areas of elevated high walls, these rock ledges, and then there'll be sharp ravines, and then there'll be more elevated, the mountainous terrain up and down. That's between the east and westbound lanes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Sergeant Vance, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 6. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
That is an aerial photo of this particular area of I-64 that we refer to as the divides.
And does this aerial photo fairly and accurately represent the way that I-64 eastbound and westbound around the divide looked on January the 1st of 2015?
It does, with one exception. That time of the year, our trees don't have any leaves, so there would be no leaf cover. It wouldn't be as green.
But other than the fact that it's more lush, I guess, in this picture, this accurately depicts the way that the highway is divided. Is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, would this aid you in illustrating your testimony, Sergeant Vance?
Yes, it would.
Your Honor, the state would move to admit State's Exhibit 6 into evidence for illustrative purposes.
Objection. Excuse me, no, sir. Motion allowed.
Permission to publish, Judge?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I would ask that Sergeant Vance be allowed to step off the stand if he could.
You may do so. So we can get closer to it to show you where we need.
Sergeant Vance, using State's Exhibit number 6, if you could first explain what we're looking at.
Yes. So this would be the eastbound lanes of I-64. This is the westbound lane, and this is the area between that we refer to as the divide. The actual shooting scene itself took place back here just prior to the divide, and then, like I said, the truck was discovered in the divide area and stuff. So this is like a staging area that our DOH, Department of Highways, uses to store equipment and materials, things of that nature. It's just a little gravel lot area that you can pull into.
So, Sergeant Vance, once your supervisor told you to go and search, using State's Exhibit 6, will you show the jury what you did?
Yes. I continued from here in the left-hand lane. There had already been several other officers that had traveled west prior to me. I don't know where they all went, but I didn't go at a very high rate of speed. I was just kind of taking my time looking. First, I pulled in. You can see right here is the entranceway that curves around and comes in. I entered into just a little bit there, just enough to be able to tell there's no cars tucked back into this little area. And then I exited back out and continued going west until I saw the tire tracks that were in the grass on the left-hand shoulder of the road.
And if you can show us on State's Exhibit 6 where it is that you saw tire tracks on the left-hand shoulder of the road.
Sure. So this area is actually raised. It's elevated above the highway on both sides. And this is part of those high wall ledges, the rock ledges that we refer to. So there's no guardrail there. The guardrail starts right in this area. So this little V looking area here is a ravine. And it's hard to see on here, but the reason that line is there is because where it drops in so steeply, the trees, there's a sharp drop in the treetops. So the trees go from way above the interstate to right in this ravine. The actual canopy of the trees is basically at the road level. When you look out the window, you're looking at the treetops. So there's a little section right here that before the guardrail starts and after those rock ledges end, that is just barely big enough for a vehicle to fit through. So that's where I had observed the tire tracks going through there behind that guardrail, and then disappear out of sight into that ravine.
So after you saw those tire tracks, what did you do next?
I actually pulled up really, really close to the guardrail, close enough I couldn't have gotten out of my car. I was literally inches. And I still couldn't see anything from the seated position of my car. So I moved over just far enough, and once I got out, I could walk to the guardrail and stand to look down, and was able to see the red truck down over them in that ravine.
Do you know Joshua Martin?
Yes, I did.
And do you know where he was when this was going on?
I don't know exactly, but this area here is the next set of those high wall ledges that we refer to. So you've got this steep ravine, some steep back up this side, and this is an area again where they've had to blast and cut into the stone, and creates these, we call it high walls. They're 10 to 20 feet tall, basically rock cliff, and they're cut into little benches. And so there's probably anywhere from 20 to 40 feet elevated above the roadway that's cut into these stone cliffs.
So when you saw the truck in the ravine, were you by yourself?
I mean, I knew there was other officers around, but I was basically by myself. I didn't have a portable radio with me that day at all, so once I realized the truck was there, yeah, I was by myself, and in an effort to get help, I basically walked out to the edge of the roadway and physically waved down the next couple officers.
And who did you wave down?
I honestly don't know. There was a trooper, a West Virginia trooper that I don't know that stopped, and then from there, two deputies, Roger Baker and Bart Baker, both arrived on scene.
And what agency are they with, sir?
They're with the Greenbrier County Sheriff's Department.
And what happened next?
At that point, once the first trooper stopped, I actually went across the guardrail, and it's really steep, so I had to go to my left out around the drainway, this ravine, a little bit. I didn't really go down into the ravine yet. I just went enough till I could see the driver's side of this truck, just to make sure if somebody was still in the truck or not, that I could see what they were doing.
And when you saw the driver's side of the truck, what, if anything, did you notice?
The front driver's door was standing open. There was something had fallen out of the truck on the ground, but it was kind of a little away from the truck, and that was pretty much it. I couldn't really see inside. By this point, it was daylight when I first arrived at the shooting scene, but it was starting to fall into dusk hours. Not dark, but starting to get.
How far away was the truck from your position?
After I crossed the guardrail,
Yes, sir.
It was probably still 50 yards at least.
After you saw that the driver's side door was open, what happened next?
I just held that position until the two deputies, both last name Baker, were able to get prepared, and they came to me to advance down to the truck to what we call clear the truck, make sure there was nobody else in the vehicle.
Were you armed at this point?
I was.
What sort of weapon did you have?
I had my sidearm, but I had also retrieved my assault rifle out of the back of my car.
Do you know whether deputies Roger Baker or Bart Baker were armed?
They were both armed. I'm not sure which style weapon they were carrying.
So, did the three of you approach the truck,
Yes, we did.
and what happened?
Since I was in the lead position, they basically provided cover for me. I don't recall which one kind of went more towards the rear of the truck so that he could see the passenger side a little bit. Once I got up to the driver's side, I still was not able to see into the back seat. The truck was kind of on top of boulders and stuff, so the floorboard was nearly waist high on me. I used my expandable baton that I had on my duty belt to break the back glass, the side glass of the truck to be able to see in. And I'm not sure, I think maybe one of the deputies, whichever one was on the other side, did the same on the passenger side just to be able to make sure we could see in. And at that point, we knew nobody else was in the cab of the vehicle.
Describe how the bed of the truck looked.
At this point, the bed had been untouched. There was a silver tarp tucked in. You could tell there was something square, rectangle, like about the size of the bed of the truck. This tarp was tucked in. There were chains in an X pattern from corner to corner with padlocks back towards the tailgate, holding the chain down.
What happened next?
At that point, the Bakers still provided cover for me, and I again used my baton and was able to break one of those locks free. Because we couldn't see into the bed of the truck, we just wanted to clear the bed to make sure that somebody wasn't hiding in the bed that had been involved in the previous incident.
So what happened next?
So I approached and opened the tailgate of the truck, and I immediately noticed it was a sheet or a curtain, something like that, was sort of rolled up all the way across by the tailgate, like where the crack in the tailgate would be, that water or something would run out, and it was blood soaked.
And what happened next?
So at that point, you still couldn't really see a whole lot. I was able to grab that corner, and I don't know if it was two mattresses or if it was a mattress and a box spring, but whatever they were, I was able to grab them, and I was able to raise them. Because of that chain, I was only able to raise them about a foot to a foot and a half, and that's when I was able to see Jerome Faulkner's part of his upper body, just mainly just his head. And I was able to see, which I later found out was his wife. Her feet were laying opposite him on the other side of the truck.
When you say Jerome Faulkner, at that time, did you know who Jerome Faulkner was?
I did not.
Did you see any part of Mr. Faulkner's head?
Mainly just his face, but I couldn't tell a lot. He had been wrapped in a plastic or a plastic bag or something of that nature.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Sergeant Vance, I'm showing you what's been marked State's Exhibits 7 through 12. If you will take a look at each one of them and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, ma'am.
And what are they, sir?
These are all photos that were taken of the crash site of where the red pickup was located.
And do all of these pictures fairly and accurately represent the way the divide and the crash site looked on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes, with the exception, for me personally, this is after, it was still a little bit more daylight than it is in these photos, but other than that, it's daylight. Yes, ma'am.
So when you were out there was a little more daylight.
It wasn't this dark, it was just starting to get dusk at this point.
Would these aid you in illustrating your testimony?
Yes, they would.
Your Honor, the State would move to admit State's Exhibits 7 through 12 into evidence for illustrative purposes.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
that's fine.
Permission to publish, Judge.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would again ask if Sergeant Vance can step down from the witness stand. This is State's Exhibit number 7. If you can describe what this is.
Okay, this is the grassy area just before that ravine. So this guardrail, it's getting pretty close actually to the end of where that guardrail ends. This is that kind of a little open area. So back behind wherever the photographer was standing is where the rock cliffs would begin.
And the brush or the trees in the left the left corner, upper left corner of this picture, describe what that is.
Yeah. So this is kind of kind where it begins right along this dark area is where it sort of begins over that steep part of the ravine. It kind of rolls and then there's a really steep drop after that. So this is a tree line that is actually at highway level. So it looks like brush, but these are actually partially tree. Those are some of the tree tops that are trees growing out from the bottom of that ravine.
So State's Exhibit number 8, if you can describe that.
Yeah, that's a closer view, and this dark area is getting further down into the ravine itself. There's some of this brushy stuff, and then inside that brush, which is really hard to see, is where the boulders and stuff that I think probably were placed by DOH, or maybe natural occurring, I'm not sure, but these boulders that are anywhere from 2 feet to 4 feet in height and width, they kind of begin there to keep that from washing away.
State's Exhibit number 9, if you can describe what that is.
So this is further down inside the ravine, obviously where the truck was located. This is the top of one of those boulders, and this briar cover, that's what we went through. We had to get through these boulders and the brush to get to the truck on foot. So this is the rear of the truck, obviously after I had opened the tailgate. This would be the passenger side.
So when you saw the truck, the tailgate was up in a closed position.
Yes, it was.
And describe how the mattress differs from where you see it here.
Okay, when you see it here, this is after I had, when I pulled it back. it kind of slid up over on the top, I guess. But it was actually set inside, right inside the bed rails of the truck with that tarp kind of sort of tightly tucked in around it with the chains across the top of it.
And you lifted it from the passenger side?
From the driver's side, I lifted it from this corner. Right. Because that, I think, is part of the mattress that's at an angle.
And the next picture, State's Exhibit 10.
Okay, that is the passenger side. Here's one of the chains. So this is just some of the trees and brush that, you know, where the truck ended up at. And of course, this would be the bed. This is the mattress that I moved, and the tarp that I referred to.
State's Exhibit number 11.
So this is back to the driver's side. Again, the mattress and stuff. This is where I was referring to. This door was not open when I first approached. That's the glass that I broke in order to be able to see in. You can't see here. There's part of that ravine. There's another inside that ravine is a real steep, like little kind of ditch, 3 or 4 foot wide. So it's just to the left here. But this is where, when you stood here, this truck was, you know, I was able to see on the back side, into the back of it.
And do you notice anything about the back tire there?
Just all the markings and stuff on it from where it was, came down over through all the brush and the rocks. And all that sort of stuff. I thought like these scratches and stuff probably are from a lot of that terrain as well.
And State's Exhibit number 12.
And that's just another shot from the truck. Like I said again, this would be standing even further down the ravine, a little bit kind of to the side and a little bit further down. There's again the tarp, and you can see the outline of the mattresses. But this is the corner where I broke the lock. I was able to lift the mattresses up.
Sergeant Vance, after you discovered the bodies in the back of the truck, at that point, how many bodies did you know were in the back of the truck?
I knew there was at least 2 human bodies based off of, I was able to see the head of what I presumed to be a male, and then I just knew there was a set of feet. But I didn't know at that point if it was male, female, or if there was anybody else.
Did you see any other bodies, any non-human? Did you see any dogs?
Yes, I did. I only saw one, and I don't recall a lot other than just seeing the fur. And I'm not even really sure at the time I realized it was a dog. I just knew that there was an animal as well.
What happened next?
So at that point, we knew there was no live bodies in the truck. I just lowered the mattress back from where I was holding it, and we backed away from the truck. It was a very gruesome, bloody scene at that point, and the crime scene investigators that were going to do all the forensic stuff, it's better to leave it untouched for them.
So did you and the deputies Baker, I guess, move away from the scene at that point?
We did. We went back up, took a few minutes, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes maybe, to climb back up through these boulders and the brush and briars back up to where the highway is at.
And I know you said you did not have a radio, but did somebody get word back up to the highway that you had found these bodies?
Yes, but I don't know who.
You did not do that? I
didn't radio it out. I think maybe one of the Bakers had a radio on them, or we may have yelled it up to officers about that at this time had gotten up to the highway.
And what happened next?
At that point, we had called for a canine. We were going to try to organize a canine search to run a canine track. So we were standing still by my car. I hadn't crossed the guardrail quite yet. I was still on the ravine side of the guardrail, but we were at the top, catching our breath from climbing back up, just kind of resting for a minute, waiting for the canine.
And when you say catching your breath, I tell you this was a hike to come up from this place.
Yes, ma'am.
Had the truck wrecked into into anything down in the ravine?
It had hit a tree. I'm not sure. I never went to the front of the truck or the passenger side, so I don't know anything about damage, but it had hit a tree that, actually even still today, it leans at an angle.
Once you got back up to the interstate, what happened next?
While we were waiting on the canine, I overheard radio traffic that somebody heard movement. At that time, I didn't know who or anything else. And then it was quite a ways away, a few hundred yards away from me, but I could hear, which now I know was Deputy Martin, giving commands. We could hear him. I couldn't tell what he was saying. I could just hear him yelling commands out. And then the next thing I heard on the radio was that they had him in custody.
When you say had him in custody, who are you talking about?
Eric Campbell.
When you say you were waiting on the canine, was it instantaneous from the time that you got up to the interstate, or were you guys having to wait for the canine to get there?
We were having to wait. I don't know how long, but I don't know how long we were waiting.
Was it more than 30 minutes?
From the time we initially found it, from when to when?
I'm sorry. Well, from the time that you started down the ravine to discover the truck until the time that you heard Josh Martin giving commands to somebody, about how long was that?
I'm going to guess 30 minutes to an hour, maybe. That's just a rough guess.
And by the time you come back up to the interstate, after you've discovered the bodies and you come back up, is it now dark?
Yeah, pretty much. It was where he was, like down where he was taken into custody. You couldn't. It was basically able to maybe see some silhouettes of people, but that was all you could really tell.
Did you see Eric Campbell taken into custody?
No, ma'am.
What happened next?
Myself and Deputy Roger Baker, we went from our location on foot. We went down to where he had been taken into custody. At that point, he was in handcuffs. I think they had cut his coat to get it off of him to make sure he didn't have any additional weapons or anything like that. But had already been. They were just finishing up searching his person and standing him up from the ground.
And what did you do?
Myself and Roger Baker, we took custody of him as being investigators. He's one of the Sheriff's Department's investigators that works in plainclothes. So we didn't know if there was anybody else that had been in the truck prior to, if there's anybody else still in the woods. And where we were at was an extremely vulnerable position if there was anybody else. So we took custody of him from Deputy Sawyers. Walked him back to where my patrol car was at and transported him to their investigators building.
When you say their investigator's office, whose investigator?
It's the Sheriff Department's office.
And this is the patrol car that you drove on scene when you came from your house?
Yes.
Will you describe that?
It's a Dodge Charger, an unmarked Dodge Charger. It's set up interior like a patrol car, so there is a partition between the front seats and the back seats, with very, very little room to move in the back seats. And then, of course, it's got all of my radio equipment. I have all the equipment the same as any other patrol officer. It's just unmarked.
Where did you sit in the car?
In the front driver's seat.
Where was Eric Campbell placed in the car?
The rear passenger seat.
Where did Roger Baker ride in the patrol car?
He did. When I had gathered my belt and other equipment out of the trunk earlier, I used my front passenger seat as the catch-all. I put everything that I may need there. And due to other incidents that have happened in West Virginia and across the country, for us, it's not a policy or anything like that, but it's a common practice. If you have something with this level of violence, we may put an officer in the rear seat with him as well. So with all my equipment and everything already being in the front, Roger rode in the back driver's side behind me.
Were you able to observe the defendant before he was placed in your patrol car?
Just from when we walked him from the scene where he was taken into custody to my car, yes.
What, if anything, did you notice about it?
Nothing. I mean, he was disheveled. His face was red. I don't. It wasn't really swollen or anything like that, but it was red. Maybe a little puffy here and there. Just, but it was already like I said, starting to get dark, and I really couldn't see a whole lot.
Once everybody took their seats in your patrol car, what happened next?
We immediately left the scene, and in order to get back to their office or any of our offices in Lewisburg, you have to continue on westbound about another half a mile to the next available emergency crossover. So I did that, and while this is happening, I actually called my chief of police to let him know that Eric was in custody and that what we had discovered. He was unaware at that point that we had recovered murder victims.
I'm sorry, recovered what?
That we had recovered bodies of the murder victims.
What was Roger Baker doing during this ride?
I didn't hear anybody really talking or anything. Again, I was talking with my chief, and at some point, I don't know if it was before I finished talking to my chief. I think it was that he had called his chief deputy and was telling him basically the same thing. So the drive is only a few miles. It's only about, we probably were only in the car 3 to 5 minutes. And so we were both just relaying information to our supervisors. He was actually still on the phone. I hung up with my chief as I was pulling into their parking lot, and Roger was still on the phone with his chief when we got there.
And you said this would be about a 3 to 5 minute drive?
I'm guessing it's only about 2 miles back from the divides to the exit, if that, and maybe 1.5 miles from the exit to the sheriff's department.
Describe this sheriff's department building that you took the defendant to.
Okay, Lewisburg is a historical town, so there's a lot of old buildings that may look like a house or were old businesses that by the historical charters they're not allowed to really do anything with other than remodel interior. So this house was one, it looks like a house, but it's been a real estate office and stuff for years until the sheriff's department took it over. So it's white on the exterior, but it sits next door to the courthouse. There's about 10 or 15 feet strip between it and the courthouse, and it shares the back of it. The parking lot that's right behind this detective's building is actually the parking lot for the main sheriff's department.
So is it in downtown Lewisburg,
It's,
West Virginia?
yes, right in the middle of downtown.
Did you and Sergeant Baker take any, make any stops? I'm sorry, I think Corporal Baker. Any stops between I-64 and the sheriff's office?
No, ma'am.
What happened when you pulled up in the sheriff's office?
So my discussion with my chief also included the fact that it was our officers that had been involved in the shooting, that we should not be the investigating agency. So the decision was made by me and my chief to kind of back out and let them have the investigation. So when we got there, Roger was still on the phone with his chief deputy. He helped me, but we got Eric out of the car, walked him to the front door of their building, and at that point I did not enter the sheriff's department building at all, just in an effort to stay out of the investigation. But so they took him inside, and I'm not sure what went after that.
What did you do next?
I stood on the front porch of his building for just a few minutes until I think it was I think our elected prosecutor and one of the assistant prosecutors arrived there within, like I said, literally within just a couple of minutes. I know I used to smoke at the time, and it was not long enough for me. I was still smoking a cigarette that I had lit and standing on the front porch. And so in that amount of time, the prosecutors had arrived, and then I went to the hospital to check on the 2 officers who had been shot.
Sergeant Vance, did you hit Eric Campbell?
No,
Did you see anybody hit Eric Campbell?
no.
After you went to the hospital to check on your officers, Did you have any other involvement in this particular case other than coming to testify?
I've had no other involvement at all.
And the person that you transported from I-64 westbound to the sheriff's office, do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
And where is that person?
He's sitting at the defendant's table.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Witness, Smith, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Officer Vance, had you worked that day?
No,
You had not worked that day at all?
no, sir.
So on a normal day, you would have your dash cam camera on, is that correct?
Yes,
And, it's your testimony that you just didn't have it on this video.
yeah, I didn't have it or any of the electronics turned on when I left my house that day.
And, you said that you also threw some stuff in the passenger side of your patrol car. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I have a patrol bag that we could keep clipboards and flashlights and just various types of equipment. And it was actually in my trunk and had my extra duty belt in it. So after I had arrived on scene, at the shooting scene, I had grabbed all that out and put that extra duty belt on so that I would have handcuffs and additional equipment.
Did you put your duty belt on after you got to the scene?
Yes.
And did that take, what, a minute?
No, it's a nylon belt. It's just a buckle. It literally maybe a minute, including getting it out of the car. Yeah.
So that was what was in the bag.
Yes.
And did you put the bag in the passenger seat?
Yes, I put the bag and the rest of its contents were in the front passenger seat.
And then did you leave your car where you parked it near the guardrail near the red truck when you heard that Mr. Campbell had been arrested? Did you walk down
Yes.
where he was arrested?
Yes.
And how far was that?
I honestly don't know. I'm going to estimate a couple 100 yards, maybe.
And did Sergeant Baker walk with you?
Yes, Roger Baker walked with me.
How many officers were down there when Mr. Campbell was arrested?
I don't know. There was officers set up this perimeter. I really don't have any idea.
Well, there were officers there from your department, is that right? Who was from this department?
Where he was taken into custody?
Well, on the scene in general.
Well, yeah, on the scene there was officers from departments from multiple counties.
Okay. Now, what about where he was taken in custody? Do you know if any officers were from your department?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Were there officers from the sheriff's department?
Yes.
And did they have their police cruisers there? Their cars down there?
I don't remember any police vehicles in that immediate area.
How'd they get there?
They were parked at various spots along the interstate and then proceeded on foot to different locations.
And how did Deputy Baker get there?
He walked from my cruiser to this location where Mr. Campbell was at on foot with me.
And so you and Deputy Baker walked Mr. Campbell all the way back down to your patrol vehicle?
Yes, we got to my patrol vehicle before we got to his.
And he normally, your car's a normal patrol vehicle, right?
It is with no markings. There's no exterior light bars, no stripes, anything on it.
The interior is normal, correct?
Yes,
It's got a cage between
Yes.
you and whoever you're arresting.
yes.
And when you got there, it would have taken, what, 10 seconds to move your bag from the front seat? Put it in the trunk?
Yeah, but I would not have put any of my police equipment in the back seat unattended with an arrestee. In the trunk, I don't know how long it would have taken me.
I mean, you wouldn't put your police equipment in the back because you don't want somebody you're arresting to have access to a gun, right?
Correct.
And that's why a lot of people would say, you don't put an officer back there with a gun, isn't that correct?
Officer Baker's left-handed, so his sidearm was against the door away from Mr. Campbell.
And so you then drove Mr. Campbell down to the sheriff's department in your cruiser.
Yes.
And you didn't think at that time to put the dash cam on either, did you?
I didn't turn anything else on.
And you have the ability to record what goes on in the car, don't you?
I have ability, well, mine's set up differently now. At the time, I had the ability to record the interior, with a camera that was in the front, but it's at night it doesn't go through the partition. But interior, no, there's no sound other than the wireless microphones that's on the officer.
Explain that. Do you have the ability to record the sound inside the vehicle?
Not without the wireless mic that the officers wear on their body.
And Mr. Campbell, at the time you got to the scene, was already in handcuffs, is that right?
He had already been handcuffed, and they were finishing the search of his person.
Was he just standing there?
They were, as I approached, they were picking him up from the ground, standing him up.
But he just stood up when they picked him up?
Yeah, as far as yeah.
He didn't struggle? with
No.
anything?
No, sir.
When you walked him down to the police car, you didn't have any trouble with his dog?
No, sir.
And you were saying that you don't remember there being any conversation on the way to the sheriff's department, is that correct?
Not that I was part of. Like I said, I was on the phone with my chief. My chief was actually at the hospital at that time with the two officers. And so I was in conversation with him, and I don't recall there being any conversation really until once I was aware Roger was even speaking was as I was pulling into the sheriff's department lot. He was on the phone with his chief deputy.
And did you at any time have any conversation with Mr. Campbell?
No.
Did he say anything to you?
No, sir.
Was he disrespectful to you in any way?
No, he wasn't.
When you got down to the sheriff's department, were you the one who got Mr. Campbell out of the car?
Baker and myself, we both got him
You
out of
asked
the car.
him to get out of the car?
Yes.
Did he comply?
Yeah, as far as I
Did he
remember.
walk in without incident?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that you noticed some swelling around his eyes.
I don't know if it's swelling. It was, I mean, I remember, like I said, I didn't have a lot of interaction with him, but I just recall his face being red, maybe a little puffy. I don't.
Just a little red and puffy.
Yeah, nothing that out of the ordinary.
Now, you didn't notice any other injuries on Mr. Campbell, did you?
I honestly didn't. I didn't look. I don't really know. Not that stood out to me. No.
Well, did you do a report?
No.
And so essentially, you didn't notice any marks on his hands or anything like that, is that correct?
I didn't notice any. No, I didn't look.
Any scars on his neck or anything like that?
I never looked.
Didn't see any sort of puffy marks on his ears or scars on his ears?
Not that I recall. Like I said, I didn't. I wasn't part of the officers that searched him or patted him down. All I did was walk him from A to B.
No scratches or anything like that on his face, did you?
I don't. Not that I immediately noticed. No.
Just a little swelling under each eye?
I don't even know if I'd say under each eye. I just remember his face being red, and I mean, that was about it.
Question about your visit to the red truck. You mentioned that there was a tree in front of the truck that the truck hit, is that right?
Yeah, it may have hit more than one tree. I know there was one tree that, like I said, was leaned. I assume was leaned from the accident. It appeared that the front of the truck was against that tree, but I never went to the front of the vehicle.
And you broke the back windows so you could see in because they were tinted, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, you didn't break the front windows, did you?
No, sir.
And they weren't broken, were
I don't recall if they were or not.
they? The airbag didn't deploy, did it?
I don't think so, but I'm not certain. I never entered the vehicle. I never looked inside it.
That was the other question I was gonna ask you. Did you wear gloves down when you did that, or did you have gloves on when you did that?
I don't recall. Yeah.
But you didn't go inside the vehicle?
I didn't go in. I just looked in from the outside. Yes.
Nothing further.
Correct?
Were you down at the accident scene where the truck was as any sort of crime scene investigator?
No.
Why were you there?
Solely to clear the vehicle to make sure that we didn't know it was Eric Campbell at the time. We knew somebody, a male, had fled in that truck. The only reason I was there was to try to apprehend whoever that was.
And when you were with the defendant, did you see anybody perform any body search of him, or anybody making any indications of any of his marks or scars or tattoos or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
I don't have anything from it.
Thank you, Mark.
Did you frisk him?
I did not, no.
You did not. You just relied on what the officers had done.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Nothing further, Judge.
Thanks, sir, for saying that.
We would ask that Sergeant Vance be excused from the meeting.
Yeah,
No, sir.
that'd be fine. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our afternoon recess at this point. During this time, it is your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. Duty not to talk to the parties, the witnesses, or the lawyers about anything at all. Further duty not to talk to anyone else, to allow anyone else to talk with you, to say anything in your presence about this case. Anyone communicates with you in any way, let the sheriff know about it when you come back in. Have no contact with anyone participating in this trial. Don't do any individual research, investigation known about any issue in this case. Stay away from your smartphones. And do not form or express any opinion about this case during this time. Leave your notes in your seats. And with that, will everyone else will remain seated? I'll excuse the 18 of you from this courtroom and ask that you return and assemble in the jury room at 5 minutes to the hour of 4. If that's your excuse. Again, we go by that clock. You don't have to go back this way, you want to. We'll go out this way, you're fine too. Record should reflect that all the jurors asked from the court, do anything record?
Nothing on behalf of the state, Your Honor.
Thank you, record. Thank you.
Yes.
And recess 5 minutes.
Court be recessed to 5 minutes to 4.
Yes, sir. Two, right. Thank you. So,
Scene security officer for that scene. We did have to wait. We got stood by because they were still searching in the woods. When we first got there, of course, the Edward was on scene. They took him on scene. And whenever Mr. Eric Campbell, whenever he fled, they didn't know if he was the only person that fled or if there was another person with him. So initially, we didn't know if it was 2 or 3 persons that were involved in this. So when we arrived, we had to stand by until our SRT actually was clearing the woods for an additional person.
What is SRT?
The Special Response Team, which is the state police version of a SWAT team.
What time did you arrive on the scene?
On the scene, as far, now this is the crime scene 2, which is the red truck. I've got that I've arrived at 19:31 hours, which is 7:31 p.m.
What time did you arrive at crime scene 1?
I'm not 100% sure. I would say just a guess, probably 30 to 45 minutes prior to that.
Did you observe what you guys call crime scene 1?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Corporal Ellison, I am showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 13 through 16. If you will look at those and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, ma'am. This is crime scene 1, which is the white Tahoe, and where the officers, where they had the officer involved shooting.
I mean, are those pictures of those scenes?
Yes.
And do those pictures fairly and accurately represent the way that crime scene 1 looked on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
And would these aid you in illustrating your testimony?
Yes, ma'am, they were.
Your Honor, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibits 13 through 16 into evidence for illustrative purposes.
Any objection?
No.
Motion allowed.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Showing you State's Exhibit 13, if you can describe what that is.
That's a approximate mile marker of 169 West. This is just, I'm not sure whose patrol vehicle this is Lewisburg City. And of course, just like on the video, this is the white Tahoe that had the North Carolina plates. There was, of course, a couple of suitcases, but it was found just like this when we arrived. It was, I think that was a black jacket or something that had fell out of the side, but it was depicted just like this whenever I arrived.
And the guardrail that's seen on the right side of the picture, sort of just past the front of the patrol car, do you know what it looks like on the other side of that?
Just from what I can recall, as soon as you go across the guardrail a little bit, it kind of went down just a little hill into the woods.
And the next picture, State's Exhibit number 14, if you can describe what is depicted there.
That's the back of the Tahoe.
And when you arrived, those suitcases were on the ground.
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit number 15. What is that?
That's the license plate that was on the vehicle.
And State's Exhibit number 16, if you can describe what that is.
That's the driver's side of the white Suburban.
And that's the way that it was discovered,
Yes.
with all that red mud on it?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you investigate or process or do anything with crime scene 1?
No.
So after you arrived at crime scene 1, and were given the go-ahead 30 to 45 minutes later. You said you arrived at crime scene 2 around 7:32, is that correct?
7:31 is what I got marked down.
What happened when you arrived on scene, on crime scene 2?
Like I said, we were waiting on special operations to clear. They also had a bomb tech that come and search the area just to try to clear, make sure there was no those kind of dangers. But it was myself. There was a Corporal Patrick Shrewsbury, also Trooper Joseph Fry. That's who helped me process this scene. Corporal Shrewsbury was taking the photographs, but I was walking there with him as we were going down. We took photographs of how the red truck's path going down over into the divide is what they're calling it. But there was just a gap in the guardrail, and the truck had went to the left of the guardrail down over the hill, and there was a concrete some kind of concrete barrier that the truck went over, and then down at the bottom there was, which it could have still went further, but it kind of went across a bunch of these rocks and boulders, and then it come to rest against some trees. And when we got there, the truck was still running even at that time.
And once you arrived at the truck, what is the process that you went through to go through the crime scene?
We made a decision that we were going to try to leave the interior of the truck. We were going to search for weapons, but we were going to try to preserve the interior. We didn't want to process the interior of the truck because it was, the pictures really doesn't do it justice. It was sidling on a hill. It was just a really difficult place to try to process especially the interior of a truck. But Corporal David McMillan and Corporal, I think his name's Ewart Blevins, had secured that scene. Whenever we got there, they were the scene security officers. And we were advised that there was possible victims in the back of the truck. So when we got down there, we just started taking photographs. We did look inside the vehicle for weapons. At that time, there was a Sergeant Chris Payne and a Corporal Claude Workman. They come down to do the total station, which is the total station is a it's a device that they use to measure. It's got lasers, plus they have almost like a transit. They can draw scenes to scale, which means they can draw it on a computer diagram and have it exactly to scale everything. They could have the vehicle to scale to a house, to a road. Everything is exactly how it is on a scene. So they come out. They were working on that. Let me see it. We started at 9:15. The medical examiner, it was the county medical examiner. His name was James Lewis. He arrived. We carefully removed the chains, which the chains were already off of the tarp and everything, but they were still hanging there on the truck. We moved the tarp and the mattress. We laid them to the sides. We could tell that there was 2 victims there.
Trooper Ellison, as you were going through each stage of processing this scene, did you take pictures to document each stage as you went through that?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Corporal Ellison, I'm showing you what's been marked States Exhibits 17 through 34. If you will look at each one of them and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, ma'am. That was the scene down at Crime Scene 2 where the red truck was found.
And are these in order of succession of basically how the crime scene, or at least, I say Crime Scene 2, it's really the back of the truck. Is that accurate, the way the truck was in the ravine and the way you guys took things out of the back of the truck? Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, and also we didn't, like I said, we did go through the front of the truck briefly, but we did not want to process that on that side of the hill. So we were going to secure it. So all we was going to do is search the back of the truck.
And do these fairly and accurately represent the way that the back of the truck looked when you arrived and as you were going through processing this scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And would they aid you in illustrating your testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, the state would move to admit States Exhibits 17 through 34 into evidence.
Good, Jack.
The photos at the scene,
Yes.
no objection.
Motion left.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
The first picture there, Corporal Ellison, is States Exhibit 17. If you can explain what that is.
That's the back of the, shows the license plate that was on the red truck.
Did you do anything to find out, like to run that license tag through NCIC and to determine who the owner of the truck was?
I know that we listed it, and I know that I did contact our communications and run that, but to be honest with you, I don't have any of the paperwork with me or anything.
Well, do you remember who it was? Who was the owner of the truck? Do you remember what you were told?
I don't. I really don't.
States Exhibit 18, if you can describe what's shown in this.
That's the shows the passenger side of the bed looking down. It also shows the tarp. Shows the tarp and the mattress, and then there was some items underneath.
Do you know what those white things are that are to the right side of the mattress?
It seemed like they were some kind of like drapes or like a divider for a window or a door or something like that.
Like a set of blinds?
Yes, something like that.
States Exhibit number 19. If you can describe what that is.
It's just the the rear passenger window of the truck where it had been broken out.
And if you can describe what we're seeing here in the front part of the truck.
It's just limbs and of course the tree that was hit right there. Just limbs and brush where he ran up on the tree. And like I said, something else is this picture doesn't do it justice, but there was a lot of rocks, especially right in this section. There was a lot of big rocks there.
So did the truck crash into rocks and trees?
I would say that could be said, yes.
And from the way that this truck was positioned, was that truck driving any further in a forward position from where it is right now?
No, it stopped right there from what I can tell.
Could it have driven any further?
Not without some assistance.
States Exhibit number 20. What is depicted here?
Right there you can see what appears to be a paw from one of the dogs. but also a cardboard box with bleach sprayer on the side. You still got these drapes or blinds or whatever you want to call them, and the tarp and the mattress.
State's Exhibit 21. If you can describe that.
That's just pulling the tarp back, seeing the mattress. This is the driver's side of the truck, and also it looks like some type of sheets that with possible what appeared to be blood at the time.
So at the bottom left part of the picture where is the red, I assume is the red truck, is that where the tailgate would hook in if it were closed?
As far as I know, yes, ma'am.
And that's where these sheets that appear to have blood on them, that was, so they were towards the back near the tailgate.
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit 22. If you can describe what this is.
And this shows the hill that it was on a little bit better because it was almost like this little area here was almost like a little knoll, and there was a bunch of rocks in here and a bunch of rocks almost like maybe a really old creek bed or something that come around here. But the truck was sitting more sidely than what it appears. But that's just the driver's side. I think Trooper Shrewsbury actually crawled up on the bank on this side a little bit just to take a picture of the overall driver's side of the truck. But also, this box right here, I'm almost positive that that's the box that was marked hydrochloride on the side of it.
How did you say it was marked?
I'm pretty sure it was marked hydrochloride because we did take pictures of that.
And did you leave all of the contents inside of the cab area of the truck? Did you leave that as is? You didn't take anything out and
We did not
inventory it?
No. The only thing we inventoried was outside of the truck.
State's Exhibit 23, is that just a different angle of basically the same picture?
Yes, ma'am.
And drawing your attention to the back wheel of the truck, does it appear that it is most or some of, just describe what you see there in that picture.
It appears to me that the back wheel is almost like it's been dug, maybe once, I mean, this is just a theory, I can't say for sure, but what it looks like to me is once the truck had hit the tree, that whoever was driving it spun the wheel and dug a little rut out.
So when you say that the truck was not being moved without assistance, is it because it was stuck there?
Stuck there because of that tree.
And would you say because of the way the back wheel is?
Well, mostly, yes, because I think it was, to be honest with you, I think the truck was stuck on this tree, and I don't think it would have moved frontward or backwards.
State's Exhibit 24, if you can describe what that is.
Just another, trying to show I was telling you about the little, almost like the creek bed. If you can see, this is almost like a ditch, and you can see the rocks that are in here. But it almost like a bench that comes around on this side, and like an old creek bed or something right here. But it was almost like a V that come up, and it was almost two separate hills. So this hill come up and V'd into this old creek bed, and then this bench come around from up top, crossing the concrete barrier over on this side, and then come to rest right here at this tree.
Your Honor, may I approach
Yes, ma'am.
Corporal Ellison? This side of the truck, is that, which bound lane is that?
If you would go straight above, walking straight up top, that would have been the westbound going towards Beckley. If you would have went down the hill about 400 yards, well down and then up and back down, it would have been on the east side going towards Lewisburg.
So the westbound side is where the shooting was,
Yes.
and to go back towards the other direction, you would have had to go, you say down and then back up and then back down? Is that because of the boulders there?
I mean, it's really steep. I mean, it'd be the same as if you just went over the side of a mountain and decided to make your own path. You couldn't do it. And yes, it's too steep. The boulders, the hill, the trees, everything was just in the way.
State's Exhibit 25. If you can describe what this is.
Okay. Of course, this is after we rolled off the mattress. You've got all of these, I don't know what to call them, they're drapes or something like a window shade.
Like a vertical blind?
Yes, like a vertical blind. Then you've got an old, what appears to be like a bed sheet or a bed cover. Of course, you got the white sheets, but you have a female victim laying there that ended up later being identified as Dora Faulkner.
And State's Exhibit 25, does that basically show the same thing, just from a little different angle?
Yes, ma'am. Now there was, okay, the way she was laying, and I know you can't see it here, but there was a light brown dog located next to the victim's left leg in the back of the truck. So the way she was laying, this dog would have been underneath here. And then, of course, from the other picture, you can see the other dog over here.
So the paw that we saw in the earlier picture.
Yes, ma'am.
And so from right here, where is Jerome Faulkner's body?
Okay, from right here, his body is down this way, but his, if I remember correct, his head is up that way.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
He would have been laid vertical, but from what I remember, I think his head was up towards the front of the truck there. I'll have to look.
In State's Exhibit 27,
It's another picture.
and does that depict the chains there?
Yes. Yeah, they were hooked here and then just, where they'd been taken off, they were just laying beside the truck.
In State's Exhibit 28,
Just another picture showing, the blankets and the dog, the bleach box, just there in the back of the truck.
State's Exhibit 29,
Okay, this is, later identified as Mr. Jerome Faulkner. This is when we just lifted up this bed sheet, and you can just see what initially, when we seen this, the plastic right here around his face, and then of course we seen lacerations on his chest. Of course, the amount of blood that was there. We just appeared to be somebody tortured.
when you pulled the bedspread up like that, the red pole that we see there, is that something that you have put in, or one of the crime scene team members has put into the scene there?
Yes, and to be honest with you, I think that it was one of the firemen's poles. We were just trying to get a peek of what was in there before we disrupted anything.
And was Mr. Faulkner's shirt like that?
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit 30. What is this?
That shows, that's Mr. Faulkner. It shows somewhere around his chest area. Well, you can still, up here, you can see the bag that was wrapped around his face. You can see blood all around his neck. You can see a big laceration right here on his chest. Right here.
State's Exhibit 31.
This kind of shows the same picture, just closer, but you can see the dog in this one. This, like I said, his whole face was like wrapped and tied in plastic. And of course, he had the big laceration on his chest, and this little brown-looking dog here was laid up here beside him.
State's Exhibit 32.
And that's when we uncovered the blanket off of him, and he's still laying in the same spot, but we had kind of got a vantage point. And like I said, I don't know if it's like a store bag or what kind of bag that is, but it was like you tied it over his face.
And what is on what would be sort of the right upper corner of the picture? If I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe that this is, I don't know, I'm pretty sure that this is Dora, but I don't know, I think this is her back, because her head was laying down the other way, and her legs going out that way, from what I can remember.
And what, sir, is this?
It appears to be maybe old blood or possibly a chemical, I don't know.
Is that on additional bedding, like sheets or a mattress cover or something like that?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Was that all removed and collected as well?
Yes, as far as I know, yes.
State's Exhibit 33. What is that?
That shows Mr. Faulkner. It shows damage to his hands, and just shows his legs, his belt, that old flannel shirt that he had on.
And State's Exhibit 34. If you can describe what that is.
That's after we removed Mr. and Mrs. Faulkner. And something from 2115 to 2219, which that's right a little over an hour, we moved the tarp, we got photographs of the victims, we removed the mattress, set them to the side, and we also had to wait until the fire department cut brush, and we had to clear a path. They had an ATV with a backboard on it, and between us and the fire department and the EMTs, we all helped carry them out of there. They put them on the back of the ATV, which was equipped for a backboard. They drove them up to the top of the hill and put them in an ambulance from there.
Did you do the same with the dogs?
Yes.
And once Mr. and Mrs. Faulkner and their dogs were placed in an ambulance, where did they go?
Went to the Greenbrier Valley Medical Center. We sent them there to await transport because at that time we thought that they were going to go to our chief medical examiner's office, but they were waiting transport from their morgue to the chief medical officers.
So when you say you took them to the hospital, there were not any life-saving efforts that were going on at this time?
No, it was very well. I mean, you could tell that these people had been passed away for quite some time.
They were being transported just to be held in the morgue, is that correct?
Yes. So autopsies could be done.
And was the truck removed from this scene after Mr. and Mrs. Faulkner were removed?
Yes, ma'am. We had, I've got the name of the company. It was a tow truck company. Let me see here. I've got the name of that company
I don't
somewhere.
know that necessarily.
Okay,
I
it was-
I don't know, we need to know the tow company. So was the truck eventually towed from there?
Yes, they, just like I said, this is coming from my memory, best I can recall. First, they got above, right on the interstate. They took the cable down and pulled it straight towards the interstate for so long. Then they were able to back down just a little ways where the truck traveled. Like I said, a very short ways, and they were able to drag it back up to the top of the interstate.
And
And-
once the truck got to the interstate, what happened?
We sealed it up with evidence tape and plastic the best we could, some of the windows. And another trooper followed it to the crime lab in Charleston.
Was it secured there?
Yes, they have a garage that they put it in.
What did you do next?
After the scene, after the truck was pulled up, we went ahead and secured everything. I went with the medical examiner over to Greenbrier Valley Medical Center, and I didn't want to disturb the bodies, but I wanted to, or the victims, I'm sorry, the victims. I didn't want to disturb them, but I wanted to get as much evidence as I could. So I went over there took a few more additional photos.
And when you say get as much evidence, were you collecting any evidence from their bodies?
I mean pictures, photographs.
May I approach your honor?
Yes, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to excuse you to the jury room for just a few moments while you in the jury room do not discuss this case among yourselves and do not form or express an opinion about this case during this time. That's your excuse to the jury room. Record reflect jury's absent from the courtroom. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the photos, I don't the court hasn't seen it yet, but the photos that prosecutors got to show this crime scene investigator, are not a crime scene, and they're at EME's office. My understanding is they did not do that examination in West Virginia, they did one in North Carolina. I certainly understand that those photos will illustrate the testimony of the medical, or some of them will probably illustrate the testimony of the medical examiner, but I do not believe that there is, we believe that the photos at the medical examiner's office in West Virginia are just prejudicial. There's not a really good reason for this particular witness to be testifying about what he saw in his office in West Virginia. It's unrelated to the crime scene.
Judge, Corporal Ellison has testified that this was at the morgue, if I may approach. Judge, this are State's Exhibits 35 through 48. I will tell you that there are several from the morgue there at the Greenbrier Valley Medical Center that the state is not attempting to introduce. This is not at the medical examiner's office. This is not any exam that the local ME there in Greenbrier County did. This is what Corporal Ellison noted about the bodies that he couldn't note or take pictures of because of the terrain and the way that the truck was positioned. Judge, this was on January the 1st. The autopsies that were completed here in North Carolina were not done until January the 5th. This would be an accurate representation of the way that the injuries looked on January the 1st there in West Virginia, and I believe that they are probative, and their probative value certainly outweighs any prejudicial effect. I mean, of course they're prejudicial, the bodies have been tortured, but it's more probative than prejudicial.
He's gonna have, photos from the medical examiner's office.
Yes, sir.
Are they going to repeat this? Yeah, there's some of these things that are here, the dogs. Are you objecting to that?
Well. Yeah, Your Honor, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's more under the circumstances of what the scope of this officer does. It's going to be reflected on what the medical examiner and it's just based on basically the Hennis type case objection where, you know, showing more photos for the purpose of showing is not appropriate. And of course, there's we recognize that some of this information is going to be from the jury. So, we check on these circumstances. And I will say one final thing, Your Honor. I mean, I understand that the officer's just giving his impression of what he saw, but I think words like torture are probably appropriate. It describe what he sees there as far as factual conclusions like that. That's sort of separate. We would object to that. The basis of the objection is the relevance and the prejudicial impact.
What you got from the medical examiner that are different, or that are?
Judge, certainly, I mean, his testimony is not to give any sort of opinion about what these injuries are or how they were sustained, just what these bodies look like when they were removed from the truck on January the 1st of 2015. To be sure, the medical examiner has documented and did document every one of these injuries and other injuries, the multiple injuries that were sustained on both Dora and Jerome. The purpose of these is to show the jury what the bodies look like when the condition that they were in when they were put in the truck and because that's how they were found. And these pictures just couldn't be taken because of the terrain. And he testified that the firefighters had to come and cut back brush in order just to remove the things that were on top of the victims. But these are just to show what the condition that the bodies were in.
Now, what did the dogs show?
And it's the same for the dogs, the conditions that the dogs were in when they were removed. And there are pictures that are also taken, and we will seek to introduce from the necropsies judge, but we have gone through those with Dr. Tucker, as well as the autopsy photos that we've gone through with the two medical examiners, and culled those way down in order not to overshow these gory photos to the jury. We believe we are using some discretion, but this is the way that the bodies looked on January the 1st when they were removed from the back of the truck, and that is relevant.
Anything further?
No, sir.
I allowed you to pick one of Ms. Faulkner and one of Mr. Faulkner and one of each dog. Otherwise sustained. That was conflicted in. Particularly since the medical examiner is going to testify as to the individual wounds.
Yes, sir.
And will have his own pictures.
May I approach?
Yes, ma'am, this is out of an abundance of caution.
Yes, sir. If we can have just a moment.
Yes, ma'am. You can keep the same numbers, they don't have to be, it's just for the purpose of the law.
That's fine, Judge, so it'll be sex exhibits, well, they haven't been committed
You're just
anyway,
gonna need
or
to,
identified.
but you passed up to the court numbers what?
I passed it to the court numbers 36 through 48.
Through 48, and I've limited you to 4.
Yes,
Which
sir.
are?
And those are number 36, number 38, number 47, and number 48.
You know which ones they are?
I don't know
So
specifically.
that they have to look at them.
He is so smart at turning himself off.
That's the city. You ready?
Yes, sir.
You ready to?
Yes, yes.
Maybe invite you in. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time during this trial that we excused you from this courtroom. We excused you from this courtroom because we did not want you to know what we were doing. If we had wanted you to know what we were doing, if we did anything at all, we'd let you stay in here. The fact that we may have done something, if anything at all, while you were not here, it should not concern you at all, and you should place no importance upon it at all. If you want to know what we did while you were not here, and you ask me at the end of this trial, and more importantly, if I remember, I'll be glad to tell you. But otherwise, don't worry about it at all. Witness will stay.
Got a bad approach with
Yes,
us.
ma'am.
Corporal Ellison, I'm showing you what's been marked States Exhibits 36, 38, 48, and 47. Do you recognize them, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
And what are they?
Photographs of the Faulkners, Dora and Jerome, and also the dogs.
And do these where were these taken?
These were taken in the morgue of Greenbrier Valley Medical Center. which I arrived there at 01:11 hours.
And what is that in non-military time?
Sorry, it's 1:11 in the morning.
And do these fairly and accurately depict what you saw at Greenbrier Valley Medical Center in the morgue there on that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And would they aid you in illustrating your testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, the state would move to admit these exhibits into evidence.
Just the same objection.
Objection, no objection is over. Will the motion to introduce the evidence be allowed?
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm showing you, Corporal Ellison, what has been marked as State's Exhibit 36. What is that?
That's the face of Dora Faulkner. It shows, of course, she's got laceration here, a big laceration, several lacerations across her head. Just the blood and everything that was around her face. And also, you can see it's the same bedspread and shirt that was in the back of the truck.
So when she was transported to the medical center, which I take it she was transported or wrapped in the bed sheet and the things that were in the back of the truck?
As far as I know, she was put in she was put in a body bag. And then what happens is whenever they go to a morgue, it's the local medical examiner, it's not the doctor, but the local medical examiner will respond to the morgue. They're responsible for sealing up the body bags, and they actually tag the body bags to where it matches from there to wherever they're transported, whether they're transported to Charleston, West Virginia, or North Carolina, or wherever.
And is that what happened in Dora's case? Did you see her placed in a bag?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see her sealed and the number given?
Yes, ma'am.
And State's Exhibit 38, what does that show?
Shows the left hand of Mr. Jerome Faulkner, just the condition. You can also see some injuries, what appears to be, to me, it looked like burn marks on the hand. You can see some bruising and other things on his stomach there.
And I know the picture, the earlier State's exhibits from crime scene 2, Mr. Faulkner was depicted with a bag around his head. Did that remain on him in this particular picture or while he was at the morgue?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you see Mr. Faulkner's body placed into a body bag?
Yes.
And was it sealed?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that done so in the condition that he was removed from the truck?
Yes, we did not disturb anything.
And now I am showing you State's Exhibit 48. Do you recognize that?
That's the little light brown dog that was in the back of the truck.
And the dogs were also transported to the same morgue, is that correct?
Yeah, they were placed, now the dogs, from what I can remember, they were placed in one single body bag. Both of them were placed in one body bag.
How big were these dogs?
They were small to medium dogs, just kind of a smaller dog.
And did you see that bag sealed?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm showing you State's Exhibit 47. What is that?
That's the darker colored brown dog. Just the face, shows the face and some trauma to its face and blood.
And is that while it's actually in the bag that it was sealed in?
Yes, ma'am.
And so they were sealed together, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you saw that?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You can have a seat. After you,
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna take our evening recess at this point. During our evening recess period, it is your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. It's duty not to talk to anyone else, not to allow anyone else to talk with you or to say anything in your presence about this case. If anyone communicates with you in any way, talks with you, email, Facebook, any of those kind of things, you come into contact with any material about this case, whether it's printed, television, over here something, be careful and mindful of that to avoid it at all costs. If you come into contact with someone who tries to contact with you, let the sheriff know about it when you come in tomorrow morning. Have no contact, communication with anyone participating in this trial. Don't do any individual research or investigation on your own about any issue touching on this case. Stay away from your computers in any form. Don't go on Facebook or any of those kind of things and say anything about this case that invites comment. We'll know about it right away from a whole lot of sources, and you don't want to have that problem. You've agreed not to do that in your jury responsibility sheets. And do not form or express any opinion about this case during this time. Leave your notebooks in your seats. And with that, while everyone else will remain seated, I'm going to excuse the 18 of you and ask that you return and assemble in the jury room tomorrow morning at 9:30. That's your excuse. Record reflect that all the jurors asked the courtroom anything record state.
Nothing about the statement.
State record. Yes, sir. Sheriff, you recess that tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Everyone stand.
Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Grant County Superior Court got to be in recess until 9:30 tomorrow morning. I'll say this call in court. You may leave.